Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Give My Head podcast with myself, Tim McGarry, and my comedy colleague,
Damon Quinn.
As you know the form, ladies and gentlemen, we're on episode 76, I think we are now, and on the Give My Head podcast, we speak to politicians, we speak to comedians, we speak to actors, we speak to anybody interesting. Before we introduce our wonderful guest today, a couple of quick plugs. First of all, Give My Head Piece is on tour. I'm sure you better get your tickets quickly because they are selling out all around the 6 counties, and we're across the border as well. We'll talk about that with Matthew later on. We're cross-border now, Give My Head Piece.
Yeah, we're doing our bit for United Ireland.
We are in
cross-border project.
Castleblinny, Donegal and Dunleary. But we have a couple of big shows coming up in Derry. We're 2 nights in Derry on the 5th and 6th of, or is it 6th and 7th of March, and then we're in the Grand Opera House the last week of March. They're selling very fast, so you need to get your tickets now. Most of the venues around the province, are we allowed to say province, are sold out, but get your tickets now for Give My Head Piece. And we're also delighted to say we have a brand new sponsor, ladies and gentlemen. It is the Pocket Geek Tech Repair, Belfast at 152 Lisburn Road, for the ultimate in quality repairs and used devices for all your tech needs, ladies and gentlemen. Pocket Geek, I cannot recommend these people highly enough because they did me a very big favour. I'm a bit of an idiot, and I accidentally, very gently, broke my partner's laptop. And I'm very gentle. And what happened was I cracked the screen of her laptop, and she was, let's say there was unparliamentary language, say, Matthew, when she learned that I broke their screen because she had a big project to do, and I took it to the Pocket Geek. Well, I took it to another shop, which is a fruit. I don't know if you know a well-known fruit, not the lychee shop, not the kumquat shop, and they were going to charged me an arm and a leg, and I took it to Pocket Geek on the Lisburn Road, and these guys says, we can sort that out for you, and they did it. Not only did they do it very quickly and very efficiently, they did it cheaper than they said they were going to do it, and they are absolutely brilliant. So I have a lot of time for Pocket Geek. They repair pretty much anything: phones, tablets, laptops, consoles, drones.
Yep. If you drop your phone, or you do what I do and drop it down the toilet or something like that, they're the people to go to. Pocket Geek.
Pocket Geek. Well, they fix VR headsets and GHD. What's a GHD? I've never heard of that. What's a GHD? Do you know what a GHD is? You're a young person. Hair straighteners? Seriously?
Do you not use that, mate, Tim?
Right. So they do computers and hair straighteners, right? Okay. Most phone and console repairs are done on the same day. The quality is amazing. I can guarantee you, from experience, the service is absolutely superb. Pocket Geek on the Lisburn Road.
They can also do what, because it's been with you with the laptop thing. They do a hybrid glass screen. They do, which means that protects the
phone that you keep dropping.
Yes, protects it from people like you.
Yes,
keep dropping them. So there you go.
Pocket Geek, we really appreciate your support. By the way, they're giving us a special offer. They'll give you £10 off any repair or phone in store. Just tell them you heard of them on the Give My Head podcast. That's the Pocket Geek on the Lisburn Road. £10 off for nothing, ladies and gentlemen. They're going to give you £10 off your repair. They're really, really good guys. So give them lots of love and support. And you know them very well. Our special guest today, Matthew O'Toole. Pocket Geek are actually constituents of yours.
They are. And I'm normally, obviously, like politicians would have to avoid any commercial endorsements. I can say I have no interest other than if any constituent of mine who's running an independent business, by all means patronise them, and they're a great business there in the Lisburn Road. So
they are
delighted to hear they're sponsoring.
So you can't wander into Pocket Geek and go, I heard you on the Give My Head podcast, can I have a tenner off? Do you have to declare that?
I would have to declare that, or it might be below the threshold. I think there is a threshold, but anyway, yes. But I would of course declare it. Were I to do that, I would do that, but I wouldn't do that. I would pay full value, but I would encourage all of your listeners to go and avail of that terrific discount.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you know now, our guest is none other than Matthew O'Toole, MLA, leader of the SDLP at Stormont, not leader of the SDLP, because we had Claire Hannah on this very podcast before, but you are the leader of the opposition up at Stormont. And Matthew, you've become kind of prominent because I don't want you to take this the wrong way. You're a younger man than us. What are you, 42 or something?
42.
Yes. We're 16.
Born in 1983, is he?
Born in 1983.
Yes. I actually remember 1983. I'm sorry. But
No, don't, let's not go there. No, but you are one of the few politicians at Stormont that I recognise now, because now they're very boring. don't reckon. There's a few old dinosaurs up there still, but you're kind of, you're 42, which isn't old,
No,
but you're kind of.
I'm getting there.
Where's the big names up there? Where's the fun ones up there?
Well, there's still a bit of crack to be had. Is
there?
I mean, being ginger has its advantages.
Well, I didn't like to say. Well, I was going to talk about disability.
Yes. Well, there's a bit of like my gingerness is quite. Do you know what? When I was you were talking about my youth when I was actually properly young. You were back in the 90s. It wasn't being ginger wasn't always, shall we say, a one-way bet in terms of advantage, and you could get the odd ribbing. But if you're in politics, actually, it's quite useful because people do recognise you. It's a very distinctive thing, and I've obviously got quite thick red hair, so that helps. There are a few characters still. I mean, there's definitely sometimes when you're sitting in the assembly chamber, it's not quite, I suppose, the Algonquin round table of kind of great great debate, but there definitely is the odd
reading
character.
their AI speeches. Is that what
There's definitely a bit of AI
people will
speeches going
remember
on.
you because you've got red hair.
People do remember me because I've got red hair. I'd like to think it's always because of my brilliant political analysis or my leadership qualities, but I think
soaring oratory,
my soaring oratory. I think maybe one time in 20 I'd like to think it's that, but most of the time it's because I'm ginger and have a beard and I'm quite distinctive looking. They're definitely, I would say, going back to like when I was a teenager, when you had these big men, and sadly they were usually men who were the kind of, and whenever Give My Headpiece started, and I am old enough to remember the very first 4 ceasefires in a wedding and being talked about at school. So I'm not old. I am not old. But you had the big, the Paisleys and the Adams and the Humes and all these people who
Seamus Mallon
and people who were easily mimicable but were big figures too, and Trimble obviously. Is it a bad thing there are fewer people like that? I'm not sure. I mean, certainly you like some of their qualities. You like some of those qualities of leadership, but there's definitely some of our debate could be improved, I think, by a little bit more.
Well, I mean, there's an argument to say, isn't it great that our politicians and our politics are a bit dull because we're not shooting each other anymore, and therefore that isn't dominating the news agenda. But Stormont's getting a bit of a kick. And before we get into that, we're going to get into the kicking. How the hell did you get involved? Young fella, intelligent fella like you. Young people go, because politics has partly I blame ourselves and people like us. No. We did take the piss out of politicians, still do. But we're doing a stage show, Give My Headpiece. There's nothing happening up at Stormont. You're giving us nothing.
I don't totally.
We're arguing about is bilingual road signs and is that it? The bilingual road
bollards and Hill Street.
Bollards and Hill Street.
That's really important. Bollards and Hill Street. And I have done a lot on that, and I suppose a couple of things. Number one, it's definitely a good thing that you are like our politics isn't just about like conflict and like how you get kind of people to stop setting up bombs and how you kind of have a political process that people vaguely are involved in and have peace. So that's a good thing, obviously, and that we shouldn't take that for granted. I suppose part of the problem is now all the stuff about that we are supposed to be the systems and the structures we're set up to deal with. How do you improve? How do you make the health service work? Make people not have to wait a decade in their final decades on Earth to get a hip replacement? How do you have decent infrastructure? How do you reduce child poverty? And we debate those things, but we don't debate them very well, and we don't really do anything after that, and decisions aren't really made. So that's a bit of a frustration. So I don't really blame you guys. Politicians are supposed to. They're supposed to kind of talk to the public about the challenges and say, well, here's my solution for fixing it. And we don't really do any of that. We still do fall back on the whole, let's argue about road signs.
Let's talk about you personally. How, I mean, because of people like us and I mean, you're put off going into politics. I mean, I know, particularly women, we've had Naomi and Claire and various, particularly the abuse that they get. I presume you get a bit of abuse as well. But who in their right mind goes, do you know what, I'm going to go into Northern Ireland politics? Because you had a decent career as a journalist already, didn't you, before you go? I know.
I do sometimes. And I have to say, I do sometimes ask myself that question when I'm at Stormont. I sort of, you have those moments. Yeah. I don't know if it's the TV shows Quantum Leap or Arrested Development, where you have a kind of like the record scratch sound, and you go, how did I get here? The answer is probably. Well, it's a bit different for me. So I wasn't a counsellor, and I was away from here for 20 years. I left. You
lived in England.
I lived in Scotland, then England. I went to university in Scotland, and then
you went to St Andrews.
I did, and then I grew up in Downpatrick, and I was at university in Scotland, and I travelled for a bit, and then basically was in England or in London for 15 years, basically as a journalist, and then a civil servant, and briefly in the private sector. And I suppose the main answer is Brexit. That's really boring. People are bored hearing about Brexit, but sort of 10 years ago, I was a political journalist first, and then I was a civil servant. I ended up working I was in the Treasury and Number 10.
You were actually in Number 10?
I was actually in Number 10, yeah. And
during this nonsense?
During this nonsense, and it was very, the thing that happened, as we all know, is the UK, specifically England, voted to leave in 2016. I just thought this was going to be terrible for actually the whole island of Ireland and also British-Irish relations. And I said that, and I argued that, and I was working on the communications as a civil servant. Yeah, it's very important that I say, well, you can give your civil servants are supposed to give their views and not your personal political views, but at times, obviously, my own personal experience, and in a sense, my ability, the fact that I was there as a guy from, I suppose, what you might call a clumsy nationalist, Irish identifying background, working there, I felt very like this is kind of like at quite a personal level. This is kind of a bit of a, if this happens, it's a bit of an assault on a settlement which was kind of designed for people, in a sense, from my background, to feel more comfortable in the north, in Northern Ireland, and that's why I kind of felt it very personally. So after it happened, I was in then Number 10 for another sort of year afterwards, but I felt like I can't really continue certainly working here broadly. I suppose I could have gone to a different bit of the civil service, but I felt like I wanted to talk about it. I had been a journalist, I wanted to write about it, so I left. I did that for a couple of years. I'd pop up on the media on things like this. I did a lot of social media, and I did a lot of freelance journalism about it. And then in 2019, whenever Claire, whom we've had on, who's party leader and my predecessor as MLA, she got elected to Westminster, and they needed somebody to replace her, and I was asked to put my name forward. And in a burst of, I don't know what, perhaps insanity, but a sense of, I suppose.
Were you a member of the party before then?
I had been way before, yeah. I had been years before, actually, but I hadn't lived on the island of Ireland for many years, like for 20 basically. And I'd been back and forward a lot, I wasn't in the Antipodes, but I had been away, and that gives me, I suppose, a very particular and distinct, I would have been an SDLP voter had I been here. I would have been a supporter and sympathetic. And those values, I suppose, are why I was like, this Brexit thing's a terrible idea. So I was asked. The circumstances kind of worked personally. We had just sold our flat in London, and we were able to move at that particular moment. And if it hadn't happened
sold
like that,
flat in London and could buy all of South Belfast.
No, not quite. But we certainly we'd sold that so we could move and rent somewhere in Belfast relatively quickly. And just that pure happenstance meant I was able to do it 6 years ago.
Going back to St Andrews, your alma mater, but did I read? Were you there when William and Kate were?
I knew this was going to come up. And I was asked this in another interview a year or two ago, and someone said, it was Alison from the Belfast Telegraph asked me, and she said, were you there at the same time as them? And I just answered factually and said, yes, I was. And then the headline of the Belfast Telegraph was, I was. And as soon as I read that, I was like,
that's where I read it.
Anybody who sees that headline and thinks, that guy's an absolute insert expletive. Can I use expletive?
Yeah, you can indeed. Yeah, no,
I probably shouldn't be because of my day job. The answer to the question is yes, they were in my year, both William and Kate, but I wasn't.
Really?
We weren't in the gang.
You weren't in the gang.
I wasn't in the gang. I mean, bear in mind, St Andrews, obviously, a lot of people, it's a very good university, and I was really enjoyed my time there.
Top quality university.
It is, but
it's quite small, though, isn't
it's pretty small. It's one of the smallest in the UK, and it's very beautiful. It's on the coast, and I enjoyed my time there. And it was
not much to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're a 19-year-old guy, you can fill your time with kind of hanging out with your mates and pints and things like that, and the occasional bit of study. But I suppose I was also back pretty regularly. So I wasn't. So that was maybe like, were you at the university at the same time as them? I was. We weren't in the same social circles. You'd occasionally recognise him. You might see him. Like I saw him in the pub once or twice.
So there's no way that Kate could have been living in Downpatrick now. I mean,
well, possibly. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to get I don't want to set any hairs running. But no, I think that was never a scenario that was going to happen. But I suppose what was distinctive about my experience was I was at this university, but I was always coming back to Downpatrick on my holidays to work in bars, and I was very connected to that. So I wasn't, and growing, like I pulled my first pint when I was about 16 in my uncle's pub, and I would continue doing that in my university holidays. So you could be at this university with people a lot of whom were kind of privately educated and whatever, but then like I'd be back at Christmas because I'd run out of money, and then I'd be back pulling pints and boys down Patrick.
By the way, what's the pub?
It's called Turley's. It's still there. Great bar. Just you guys have played in the Arts Centre many times.
We're playing the Arts Centre at our first show on the 26th, which might be after this goes. Turley's, which was that?
Turley's just around the corner from the Arts Centre on Scott Street.
Yes. Well, we've been in there.
Great bar. So I worked in there for many years. Before that, I worked in my uncle's pub, which is in Loughlin Island, and I worked in another Downpatrick Cricket Club in the bar there for a bit. So it kept your feet in the ground, coming back and actually having to talk to real people. I remember coming back my first Christmas after being away, and I was working behind this bar, pulling pints in Turley's and Downpatrick, and a fella, and I think was talking about how they had all these different craft beers and ale in Scotland, and how it was far superior to beer in Ireland. And there was one of the regulars, working man from Downpatrick, just slammed his fist really hard down the counter. And I won't do it on this table because I don't want to knock the water up, but he did it really hard. I think he just finished his day's work. And he pointed at me and he said, "Hey, boy, this is a tenants town." And I just thought, God, he's right. Don't just I had been kind of bumming and blowing and talking, So there's the thing about just keeping your head, keep your feet in the ground, and so I suppose I did keep my feet in the ground through all that. But call in for a pint before or after your show,
or after,
or both. Yeah, exactly. Depends on it.
Turley's. Yeah, we'll mention your name. We get free pints then.
Well, you might get charged extra, to be honest.
SDLP corruption. And why did you choose the SDLP? Were you a Humeite sort of? Was there a background in that? Were your family? Or were you?
I mean, the value. It sounds very kind of politician, but the values are, I suppose, broadly my values, and they always have been. There is a family connection. So my mum's younger brother is Mark Durkin, who led the party. So I kind of,
your mum's younger brother.
Mark's my uncle, and so there is a family connection, but it's not there's no Nepo baby thing there. As I say, I was away for a long time, and I wouldn't have been politically active here, but I would have always had the values. Yes, Hume values, the kind of, and it's the complicated thing about it is, it's a kind of mix of things, because it's not to diminish other parties, but we've probably a few different values that kind of go along together. And if you take one out, it doesn't really work. But it's sometimes hard to explain them all together. You're centre-left pro-European party, you're pro-New Ireland, and you're pro-reconciliation. I think those go really well together, but they take a few more words to explain than some of the other parties. Right. And that's always been a bit of a challenge for us. Hume was obviously the master at it. Mallon in his day too, they can explain how these things go together. And if there's a sweet spot and people and they get it. And around the time of Brexit, I think a lot of people got it because it was under threat. But you have to keep reminding people about why these values go together. And it's a bit more nuanced than some of our other political competitors, and I don't mean to diminish them, but it is a bit more complex, but it matters if you get it right.
Well, we're old enough to remember when the SDLP was the biggest nationalist party.
Yes, yeah.
It looked like it was going to stay that way. I mean, you came along
after that.
Yes,
after all
that,
a
much smaller party.
Yeah, small but perfectly formed.
Yeah. But I mean, what do you think of the argument that John Hume sacrificed the SDLP on the altar of peace?
Well, I think first of all, you said about small, obviously. There's nothing, if you want to move into a fixer-upper, there's room to grow, etc. I would say a couple of things. First of all, about, I don't buy this idea that, Hume sacrificed the SDLP. There was a conflict going on in Ireland and in the north specifically, in which people were losing their lives, and Hume articulated a structural, political, moral, intellectual solution to that involved bringing what had been the main part of armed republicanism into peace and politics here. And that structure and those ideas worked. One of the effects happened to be, because of a number of things that happened, including decisions and approaches taken by the SDLP, is that party then became bigger electorally than the SDLP. In one sense, some of the values of ours became their values, and that's not a bad thing. Those arguments, in a sense, you've kind of won the argument. But it does mean now that I think, certainly in terms of Claire's leadership, myself, what we're trying to do is not simply, it's kind of move on from this formulation of why are you tiny and they're big? Why are they bigger than you? Why are you their wee brother? And actually explain a little bit about why we're there and what the future means. And I genuinely, and I'm not just saying this, I think we've got a really important role to play in the here and now, i.e. in Northern Ireland now, in our role at Stormont, but also in terms of the future of the whole island. And if we aren't there to do it, then someone's going to have to, because some of those ideas still matter, and we still have to have we still have to be able to do some of what Hume did way back in the day, which is persuade people about the future. I'll talk about some of that, but I'm getting very
so you hold with the
ethereal.
argument that Good Friday Agreement was Sunningdale for slow learners.
I would say it was, in the sense that I think Malin was right, in the sense that the people who had opposed it were basically hardline unionism, which was a lot of unionism, or most of unionism, certainly by the late 70s or mid 70s, and armed republicanism also opposed Sunningdale. Realised that you had to have something like the Good Friday Agreement, which was a more developed version, power sharing in the North, a North-South dimension, and a solution to British-Irish relations. And that formula hasn't gone, but the truth is we now kind of need to move to the next stage. First of all, you need to improve how politics happens here, but you also need to build a vision for a new Ireland. In our view, an Ireland that doesn't have a border in the middle of it, and we're back inside the European Union. In order to do that, we're going to have to set out a vision and persuade people. I think we are ultimately a party of persuasion. I think that we're at our best when we're persuading people, and that was what Hume was great at, what Malin was great at. It's what I think Claire Hanna's good at. Colin East in his day is very good at it too. That's slightly different to what, for example, Sinn Féin are, and they're a brilliant and effective political party, and I'm not slagging them or diminishing their mandate, and I don't want to get into this thing where you're like,
oh, come on,
you're always having to take the sinners.
Slag them off.
I don't, but they are a different type of political party to us. So
a different type of political party.
Well, put it this way.
Nod on a wink here.
No, not at all. This isn't. No. I'm not genuinely no, but they're different in the sense that they are. What Sinn Féin's great strength is mobilisation. Mobilisation is an extraordinarily important part of politics. If you go around a polling station and particularly national, particularly like
from Jerry there, he's
just saying, what is he saying? Yeah, exactly. Tell him I was never on the Give My Headpiece podcast. But if you go around a polling station on election day, particularly in certain parts of Belfast, you will see an extraordinary effort at mobilisation, and I say sincerely, I admire it. It's excellent. And they're brilliant at getting people out to vote, and they're brilliant at getting people mobilised behind a particular message. What they're not so good at is persuasion and persuading people and setting a vision. I think we're a bit better at that, and I think that's where we will come in terms of the future.
I'm sorry about being serious here, but,
no, I won't be too serious.
First of all, two things. First of all, the most depressing thing about the Good Friday Agreement is that you were 15 when it was fucking signed.
I wasn't actually. I was 14. It was, but then I turned 15.
But to be slightly serious, is there a possibility of an existential risk to the SDLP? I mean, you're down to how many MLAs have you?
We have 8 MLAs.
I mean, we have to say you have 2 MPs.
We have 2 MPs. And I have to say we're.
Is there an existential risk to you?
I think people could have said that a few years ago. I don't think there is now, and I also think that, in a sense, more importantly, the values and the purpose that we serve, like, it can't go away, and I mean that really, really sincerely. You asked me earlier on, Tim, like, why are you, effectively, why are you in it? Why all the hassle? You could be doing something else. So
you could. I mean, maybe this is a compliment. You could be doing less hassle. People not ringing you up about their drains. People would go on about
being
absolutely loaded. I presume you could, if you're in Stormont or you're okay, but it's not a massive wage. Let's be honest.
Well, so public service has to matter. Whenever I was asked to do it, you do think about the nature of public service. You have to be willing to make some kind of sacrifice in order to do it. It has to matter, so it does matter. But genuinely, the values of trying to marry centre-left politics, politics being about improving lives and public services rather than just people making profits, pro-Europeanism, bringing people together, reconciliation, breaking down barriers, and doing all those as you get to a new Ireland are things that really matter, and trying to carry those values forward. So not to get all kind of hopey-changey and kind of soppy about it, but those values are kind of a big part of why you do it, because you actually believe in them.
All right. Well, if you had a choice of there's about 90 MLAs and other politicians, if you could pick 2 or 3 from other parties to join the SDLP, who would you pick and say
do they have to be in Northern Ireland?
Pick 2 or 3.
Is there a Bosman rule here?
No. Well, you're pro-European. You can pick anybody.
I certainly think like Pedro Sanchez, who's the Spanish. He's a good member of the Party of European Socialists, which we're obviously a member of, and it was a big part of Hume's thing was being. The European centre left. Yeah, certainly, it's a, but to be
Pedro
fair,
Sanchez, somebody get his number, see if he wants to be an
that's
MLA.
a wee bit like, no, that is a wee bit like, it's a wee bit like Rosario, which is a great amateur football club on the Ormer Road in my constituency.
Rosario, good football team.
But it's probably a bit like Rosario trying to sign Ronaldo or Messi.
But is there nobody who locally? Would you like Jim Allister if his politics were different to be on your team?
Well, he's a good brain, Jim Allister. I mean, look, if Jim was a centre left New Irelander and he believed in reconciliation, sadly, literally none of those things is true. So, you know what I mean? Not out of three and bad, but he's a good intellectual. He's a good operator intellectually. Politically, not so much. But yeah, I mean, like if his politics were entirely different, yes. Look, there's good people in all of the parties at the Assembly. There aren't. Put it this way, I do want to see an improvement in the quality of our politics, including an improvement in the quality of our politician. Since you asked me, I'll give you they'll probably all hate me, but now since we're being cross-party, there's a couple of very talented, well-got people in Sinn Féin, and I have lots of criticisms of Sinn Féin. I think people like Linda Dillon and Emma Sheeran, who are like very good debaters and very committed on particular issues. Alliance has lots of able people. Like Naomi has been a really effective politician. Yeah. She's one of the most effective politicians on the island in the last number of years. I would have questions about how effectively Alliance have used their mandate. They got the last election. I think they've kind of been passengers in the executive, but she's a very able political operator. The DUP has able people. I mean, there's Philip Brett is a very North Belfast representative, is a very articulate speaker. Diane Forsyth, who serves in the finance committee with me. There are able people at Stormont in all political parties. Now, I want to see more able people because there definitely are a few passengers at Stormont in all parties. There's people who are not, perhaps where you would want the politics to be in terms of quality. But we do need to improve our political culture generally because we just got such a culture of low expectations here and a culture of cynicism about politics, full stop.
Back in the day, though, we used to think our politicians were embarrassing. When they went abroad.
now they seem like...
yes. But you look around you now and you go,
Yeah, probably true. Well,
I mean, the state of American politics, the state of British politics, I mean...
it used to be that, I know people used to, like, certain... there were certain moments I remember cringing. I'm sort of daren't say it, but like I remember watching I was still in Scotland at university. I remember watching a particular. I'm not going to say it actually because it would be too rude. But watching a particular Northern Ireland politician, not from my party, be elected in the Westminster election, and I just cringed at the acceptance speech they gave. But like ultimately, do you think
means DUP?
No, well, I'm neither confirm nor deny.
Our politicians tower above them now.
Well, I think part of the challenge is that. So there's a couple of bits to it. Like people have become unbelievably cynical about local politics. Before you get on, stuff internationally is a problem, and there's a whole problem about politics generally because you're operating in this world where social media drives division and drives cynicism. Politics is supposed to be a bit about division. You're supposed to stand up and say, DUP, I disagree with you. They're basically a party on the right that I have a different constitutional view on. I'm supposed to be able to stand up, disagree with them, challenge them, debate, and then one of us wins an argument and a vote. And the law is passed, or indeed we work together and we come to a compromise, and you come to politics is supposed to be a route to working out division. The problem is we've created all these algorithms. The social media companies have designed these algorithms that dictate debate, and they promote division for its own sake. So it becomes very hard for politicians to do their job, which is in a sense to mediate division and to create a constructive outcome. So that's a problem everywhere. Locally, I think we have suffered from people just thinking that place is a joke, Stormont's a joke. And by the way, I would say, go back to 98, which you mentioned, Tim, and there's a lot of people younger than me in the Assembly now, but the one big thing I would do differently, there's a lot of things you would do differently about the Good Friday Agreement. One big thing, and I really, 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 this is one of my most consistent opinions since I've been in politics here, is I wouldn't put the Assembly in Stormont. I think it's a disaster. It's
in the building itself?
The building itself, and where it is. Yeah. It is... First of all, Belfast is a small city. Yeah. Northern Ireland, whether you're Irish, British, or don't care, is a small region.
Yeah.
it is preposterous to have this building that's a mile away from the main road, looks in a kind of completely pompous way, and then people see the debate and they think that is absolutely Mickey Mouse, and it winds them up because they see this grandiose mansion on a hill, and they look at the quality of some of the debate and they just think these guys are taking the piss. I don't know if I can say that in your podcast.
You can,
and I think that's part of the problem.
They
so you
used
want
to
to
be
get more
held in
people.
the Gamble Library. The first Stormont was first Northern Ireland Parliament was in the Presbyterian Assembly, Presbyterian College,
Union College, around the corner from
on
the
and if you've
Botanic
been in
Avenue.
it, it's basically the size of a library, an average library, you know.
So I think
compared to
they should have moved at the Belfast City Centre. There's also like whenever 98 happened, they should have moved at the Belfast City Centre. Now, they could have had some ceremonial stuff up at Stormont or something because they wanted to have the building. And by the way, I don't care about the symbolism of Stormont. I don't really care about. I don't care about the statues. All the unionist symbolism does not offend or bother me. That's not why I don't think it should be there. I think for a modern legislature in a region, it should be in the city centre. And by the way, all the hundreds of civil servants who work at Stormont and all the other ancillary buildings should be going out at lunchtime, buying sandwiches in the shops, creating economic, adding to the economic impact of the positive economic impact, going for a pint after work, shopping at lunchtime. We send everybody to this weird, kind of quasi-colonial compound on the edge of Belfast, and I think it just reinforces the weirdness. And people watch it and they think this is silly.
Yeah. Well, what was it like working in Downing Street?
It was definitely a bit different, but what was it like? Well, it was a very weird time. Obviously, I was a civil servant, and
you were there at a pretty much a turning point.
Yes.
Maybe you there when Cameron had to go out and resign.
Yeah, I was there. I was in the building. I mean, I spent the night in the building. So the 23rd of June, 2016.
It's my birthday, 23rd.
Was it?
It's ruined every fucking year. I go, just Brexit. Independence Day is Nigel Farage.
Well, I remember it was a weird thing because myself and my wife moved flat on the Friday, and I had to go straight from so I went and spent the night on the Thursday because we had to be ready to deal with it. And when I say I was like right in the middle of it, I mean I was right in the middle of it. Like I was there at midnight, and then I went up to. There's a room just above the black door, is a first floor meeting room in number 10, and I spent the night in there. And there were other civil servants there. There were other political advisors who were sort of elsewhere in the building. And then first thing, Cameron resigned, and the place was complete pandemonium.
Was the atmosphere? Were they aghast? Did they not see this coming? Were they
no,
shocked? Were they?
I mean, I think they thought theoretically it was a possibility, but the lack of preparation was like. There was a specific decision made that he didn't want the civil service to do lots of preparation. The political people didn't want the civil service to do lots of preparation, in part because if you say part of the argument is this is a leap into the dark for the Leave side, that if they can say, well, look, the civil service is getting on and doing all this preparation, that the theory was that will make it a bit less of a risk in the minds of voters. So. The next day was pandemonium, and I was like, because my job was working in communications, you have to sit and write down lines to take for other departments, and they have to say, well, this is what happens now, and what happens now is basically we don't know. Your man's resigned, and I suppose, like in a very personal way,
chaos.
That's why I'm here now. That's why I'm in this chair now. Is that I had this very. Personal sense that this is and it's particularly bad for Northern Ireland and the island of Ireland.
Sorry to interrupt. Did anybody in Downing Street during the whole debate? Did anybody really know what the Northern Ireland see it coming and backstops and all of that?
Yeah, well, me and other
anybody,
people.
Apart from you, obviously. You're from Downpatrick. You've heard of a border.
Yeah.
But in England and Downing Street and the pro-Brexiteers and all, did anybody have any thought that there might be a problem with?
Well, bear in mind they weren't pro-Brexit in Downing Street.
Well,
beforehand. There's a number of the chronology of it was that Cameron gave a speech in 2013, which I think was mad, and he didn't need to. And it's always worth saying. I was at pains to point this out. Throughout all this, I was a civil servant. You're not necessarily agree with anything that people. In the same way that local civil servants, there'll be Sinn Féin supporters who work for DUP ministers, and there'll be Orangemen who are working for departments led by Sinn Féin supporters. You're a civil servant. You're impartial, and you work for the government of the day, even if you think what they're doing is bonkers. So Cameron gave a speech in 2013 saying, if I win the next election, I'm going to call a referendum. Or if the Tories win a majority, this was when it was a coalition with them and the Lib Dems. They won a small majority. So he thought, I'm going to get this out of the way quickly. I'm going to go and do a renegotiation. A lot of this is forgotten now. He went and did a big renegotiation, or an attempted renegotiation with Europe, and he wanted a break on immigration, and he wanted a renegotiation of certain things to do with financial services. He was never going to get it. It was always pie in the sky, driven by the Sun and the Daily Mail. He did. So then the first problem was he had set all these expectations. He was going to get all these concessions. He didn't get them. Then all the right-wing tabloids said pathetic, pathetic, pathetic. So he was starting from a position where, and these were the people who Tory governments are elected in part because the British press is dominated by right-wing media. And then all of a sudden you have a situation where this Tory government is pushing for a referendum on where they're saying we need to stay in the European Union, but all the right-wing press, who are normally their mates, are saying, no, leave. And they didn't really know what to do, and they didn't really know how to communicate a positive pro-European message because they hadn't done it. These guys had spent years saying this is, Europe's basically quite crap and we don't like it and we think, and it's holding back brilliant Britannia. And then all of a sudden they have to say, but we'll sort of turn on a dime. You can't vote leave. So that was the precursor.
Cameron might have learnt from nearly losing Scotland.
Well, I think part of the problem, Damon, was that they ran the same campaign that they ran in Scotland, and he ran the same campaign that they ran in the general election in 2015, and they felt it worked for them. Basically, don't be worried too much about being positive. Just at the very last minute, say you might lose, this might cost you in the pocket. Yeah. And the problem was not enough English voters believed that, or they didn't care, or there was too much English nationalism in the air, too much anti-Europeanism, too much anti-migrant, a whole range of those things. So then Cameron, to go back to your question about Ireland, certainly I talked about it as a sort of mid-ranking civil servant, but I'm not dictating policy. I'm kind of chipping in, and probably some of these guys are like, who is this? Senior people are like, who is this guy who's making all this noise? Cameron did come over here once, I think. There was other stuff that happened. Major and Blair did an event in Derry. Other people talked a bit about the border and the potential disruption. The blunt truth is, and we come on and talk about, most English voters don't care about Northern Ireland, and they don't really know very much about it. Yeah. So they're not going to spend a lot of time talking about it because English voters won't care about it.
I mean, it was obvious to anyone here.
Absolutely, and this is exactly right.
It was obvious to anyone here, right? To have Brexit, where is the border going to go?
Yeah.
It didn't seem to be obvious to quite a few unionists who were very keen to have it.
But I think this is going to be one of the challenges, I think, for unionism, which is the Brexit fiasco has illustrated the very complicated relationship Northern Ireland unionism has with British governments. And sometimes I'm slightly unpopular with some of my unionist colleagues because of my career history. I am able to point these things out, how much of it, not just an afterthought, but a kind of never thought we are in relation to things like whether it's the border on the island or the border in the Irish Sea. The truth is, you're just so far down the list of priorities that ultimately your interests are never really going to be served properly.
But what about the argument that Brexit is actually good if you're an Irish nationalist because it has effectively weakened the union and pointed up the...
Well, it definitely has weakened the union. I mean, and I sometimes say that in the Assembly chamber, the DUP, I say, Brexit and all the consequences of Brexit, the Brexit that you wanted, one of them is me being in this chamber annoying you. I wouldn't be here, probably, certainly with this timeline. But I mean, I think it has, because the UK is a poorer country. It's a poorer country, which means there's less money to spend on public services. Mm-hmm. So there's less money to spend on public services here, like everybody else. And the unionist politicians stand up and like the DUP and Ulster Unionists, and even the TUV will stand up and say, they, like everybody else, will say there's not enough money for public services, but they'll also complain. Like all the unionist parties complained about the Tory government. I agreed with them on that. They complained about Boris. They didn't like things Sunak did. Then they obviously hate Starmer and Labour, and Starmer has been a huge disappointment from our perspective. But they don't want Farage either. So you're sort of thinking, I mean, your position is that every single British government that ever probably has been in living memory, and potential future British governments, are all bad. You don't like any of them, but we also can't leave. Yeah. We have to stay here. We have to stay in this constitutional settlement, and I just think it's a kind of unsustainable argument to make.
Yeah, I mean, because you mentioned, did you ever meet Peter Mollison?
I actually did, Matt, but only as a politician. Right. I don't ever remember. Once actually, I was doing work experience for the Downtown Radio Newsroom, and I remember going with a cub reporter while he was Secretary of State here. I didn't meet him, but it was I never as a civil servant. I did once or twice as a politician, including at a very weird event of the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. So I had been briefly introduced to him at a separate event a few months before, at like a London Irish event, and someone said, "This man's an SDLP politician," and he sort of looked at me like that and gave me a kind of very sort of like passing remark. And then at this other event, I remember I was stood next to him and I said, "I was introduced to you," whatever I said, Mr. Mandelson or Lord Mandelson. I just went, it's the only time ever in my life I've ever had this happen to me. He literally put his hand up and kind of sort of dismissed me with a flick. I mean, he was
really,
yeah. So that's my only experience of Peter Mandelson. Like, and so not
right.
It kind of reinforces all the thing about all the perceptions of
you weren't important enough.
Just dismissed with it, and that was only a couple of years ago. Like, that was whenever. What was that, 23, whenever they had the 25th anniversary?
Yeah. Did you not have a yacht or anything like that?
No, I had not even a canoe in the coils of River Downpatrick for any reason.
You're a certain age, and we are 61, 60. Do you think we'll see United Ireland in our lifetime or in your lifetime?
Well, I think you both got. I think you've got a lot of. I think you've got a lot left in the tank.
You think our lifetime?
Yeah, well,
20 years.
I think so. I think.
Seriously?
I certainly think. Well, I think we could well be in a transition period in that direction. Yeah.
Do I need to give up the drinking and the smoking, or do I just give? Well, am I all right for what? I mean, I'm not expecting to live to 150. You know.
Well, I think it would help the tax revenue from the excise. Customs would help pay for the transition. So don't be giving it up yet. As long as it's obviously I shouldn't say that. I'll get myself in trouble. But I think so. I'm really loath to say this is going to happen today or tomorrow, and I also think putting a deadline on it is not a great idea, because then what happens is someone turns around when it isn't delivered by X date. They say, "Well, you promised this was," it's a bit like journalists. I used to be a journalist and probably like yourself delivering scripts. Yeah. If you're promising the editor that you're going to have the thing delivered by that date, and you don't, then you miss the deadline. It damages your credibility.
Yeah, when we were doing Pop Goes, there was a thing, I couldn't believe it. Harold Wilson promised in 1970 a United Ireland in 10 years.
Oh, did he? I had totally forgotten that.
Yeah, he just came out with it.
But like, so I think we are talking about not many decades, but years, and within a decade or two. And as I say, I don't want to be saying it has to happen by this date, not because I don't want it to happen soon, but because I think the critical thing we need to be doing is, and it comes back to what the SDLP is about, we need to be persuading people not just of the practical economic arguments in favour of this, but kind of inspiring people on the idea of like democratic empowerment. So one of the reasons why it's connected to what we're doing in opposition is I think the public in the North are really disempowered at the minute. I think people really feel like you can't change things. Politics here is broken and it can't be changed and improved. And I think that's really pernicious, to use a $10 word. I think it's really a real problem if you're in a situation where people just don't believe that politics can improve. And I think if we can inspire people that they can build something, and this is a phrase we've been using a lot recently, build something new, that they can actually build something, you can then bring them in the conversation about saying, well, why can't we build something new in the whole island? Do we really think that, and this is no offence to Britain, because we're going to need a very close relationship with Britain in a new Ireland, but that we all think that Westminster is not prioritising this place. How do we start to build something new here? How do we engage people in the South, including, a primary school teacher in Mullingar who wants to get in the property ladder, or a retired person in Killarney who just wants to know that it's not going to damage their pension? I think we can engage all those people, but we have to start here in the North now and empower people, because at the minute people are just disengaged and disempowered. And so that's whenever people say, what are you bothering with Stormont about? Sure, we can't do anything. We just need to collapse in a heap and then there'll be United Ireland next year. It's not going to work like that. We have to build a culture of democratic empowerment and engagement in the North now.
Well, let me criticise you, because if I were a union, I'm not a unionist, I'm a very, very soft nationalist. If it happens to me, I would probably vote for it if there was a referendum. But if I was a unionist, I'd just go, you haven't done any other work really at all. You haven't done anything to persuade me, and all I need to do is sit back and, in fact, bring a referendum on tomorrow, you'd lose it, or a border poll on tomorrow. And number two, the SDLP talks about reconciliation and all that, but you're basically a Catholic party. You don't really have any. If you have a Protestant candidate, have you any Protestant councillors, any Protestant MLAs, and Protestant MPs? Well, I know there are only 2 MPs. You haven't persuaded any Protestants to join you.
Well, that's not true. That's a very good, robust line you put to me, but it's wrong on the latter one. I'm not going to go through and give a kind of confessional head count of every single one of them.
The Alliance Party are a mixed party.
So it's certainly true to say, I'll take the second part first. It's certainly true to say that historically people have associated more of our voting base and indeed our representatives with being from, I suppose, a Catholic background. It was never the case that we were a Catholic political party at all. In fact, more than one of, we had two of our founders were people from Protestant backgrounds. Ivan Cooper and Claude, whose surname escapes me. The SDLP has always been, and not just a non-sectarian party, but an anti-sectarian party. And we always have had people from multiple and different backgrounds who have been members, activists. Certainly an aim of ours is to grow and broaden the backgrounds of people. So the answer is yes, we've had several over the years elected representatives from a Protestant background. I don't know is the short answer whether we do have one at the minute because we don't do a head count. We do, for example, have the first black female elected in the north, I think in the whole island in terms of a mayor, Lillian Senoy Barr. We are, and I think we have to be moving forward, that has to be a priority for us, is proving to people from non-traditional nationalist backgrounds that how you build something new in Northern Ireland now and on the island of Ireland in the future is the SDLP. And lots of people do, and I think it's a bit tacky to go through it in a kind of head count way, but I think lots of people do see that in us, and they see it certainly in Claire Hanna. And I would say, in terms of, I'm not a shock horror. My mum will not like me saying I'm not a practicing Catholic anymore personally. I don't kind of...
Jesus, Mary.
I know. This is...
So, we need to end this conversation now.
I know. But I am... I'm not ashamed to have come from that background, but my child is in integrated school and I care very deeply about the agenda of, not just the agenda of reconciliation, but reconciliation as a core purpose of ours. Just gently in relation to our mates in the Alliance Party, with whom we share a lot of core values. But I think what's slightly different is one of the things that gets me most animated is this idea that if you mention the fact that you don't think partition has been a raging success and you think we might be better back in the European Union, that you are stained with the mark of sectarianism because that is inherently tribal. I also don't think that in order to be anti-sectarian and not just narrow green nationalist, you have to not ever talk about the Constitution. Alliance, whom I respect on a lot of things, kind of have a bit of a don't ask, don't tell policy. They say you can be unionist nationalist or you can have a view on the Constitution within our party. But none of their representatives ever seem to say they have a view on the Constitution. It seems to be a bit of they seem to remain silent. And I respect that, but I dislike the idea that to be genuinely cross-community and reconcile, you have to ignore it. You ignore the question, because I don't think that's a route to reconciliation. I think that's a route to a kind of stalemate.
Anna Lowe came out and said you probably would vote for United Ireland and got lambasted and abused.
You see, I think that's a route to stalemate. I think it's a route to stalemate if you won't ever encounter one another and you won't ever... So, I am obviously from what you might call traditional Catholic nationalist background. More of my how I live my life now is, I would hope, in a way which is, a lot of those barriers don't exist to me anymore in terms of my own family and the way I live my life. But I also lived in Britain for 20 years, so and obviously I had a career where, as we've just discussed, I was a UK civil servant. So I would hope people see in me, and I certainly think they see it in Claire and lots of our representatives, that you don't live in a narrow box. I think that does give us an ability to reach the kind of people you're talking about, Tim. And the first part of your question was just on you haven't done the work. Well, we are doing the work, and I've done a lot of the work of politics in the North now is about talking and unpacking some of these ideas and trying to set out some of the dilemmas. It's true to say that some of the detailed prospectus on how long a transition period would go, how long you have devolved institutions in Northern Ireland after reunification, or if you have them permanently, or if you have them for a phased transition period, how long it takes you to transition into the euro, the pensions, the health service.
Please God, the anthem isn't Ireland's call.
I'll tell you a story about anthems in a second, actually. I will tell you a story. But give you... Yeah, well, all those questions are questions we engage in and we talk about, and I've no different... And in a sense, part of why I'm in politics is to talk about all this stuff. But... I can bore you with a paper that we did a few years ago, which is about principles for a reconciled New Ireland, and we're really, really serious about the work, and I'm happy to sit and engage with people from all sorts of backgrounds. And by the way, people literally come up to me in the shop and say, we want to talk to you. That sounds really like I'm making that up, but they are engaged in it.
We had Sam McBride in here, and Sam and Fintan O'Toole did that for and against, which is really good, and they've done a lot of public debates and stuff. They did one in Dublin now, which was very interesting because apparently the audience up here were more pro-United Ireland than the ones down south, you know.
Yes.
No, but middle class audiences all down south. But the things like the flag and all of that were quite important to people down south. And
there is, and I think that's why, for example, you could sort of ask me earlier on about Sinn Féin's a big party now, and kind of slightly. Sort of to you guys, you know, Sinn Féin they're the big party now. They're and like Sinn Féin are like a bigger party than us in electoral terms, and I've no qualms about acknowledging that mandate. But it's also true to say, if they're the only significant pro-unity party in the north is Sinn Féin, that's a problem for unity. It just is structurally.
They have some baggage.
Yes, that. Yes,
I don't mean that. I'm being slightly facetious.
You are, but that is an issue. But it's also, but it's not just that. It's also, and this isn't me being down on them, because, as I say, there are lots of things they are good at. But what Sinn Féin don't do is advance arguments or make arguments that might that have any political risk. They don't tend to. So Michelle O'Neill has made lots of really positive gestures in terms of reconciliation, and I genuinely commend her for it. But in terms of leading debates, it's not necessarily their strong point, and persuading.
You think the slogan for a new Ireland shouldn't be "Ooh, up the ra"?
I think that's probably fair. But you were talking about anthems. I was in a. And you were talking about, like, I am now, like, whether I like it or not, a middle-aged man, and I have three kids, but I have two wee boys. One's 8 and the other's 3. And like lots of elderly millennials, I'm trying to inculcate my kids with things that were important to me. I was trying to get my son to like Man United, but he's just to spite me, he says he supports Man City, which is obviously offensive. But the other thing, I don't know how they started watching it, but it was a thing that I was into when I was a kid. It was a cringeworthy WWE.
Oh, right.
It was now called WWE, but was called WWF Wrestling, right? And all the wrestlers from back in the 90s, Hulk Hogan, these guys.
Oh yeah,
Jake the Snake, and it was a big deal back in the 90s. It's still going on. I was actually in Belfast a few weeks ago for a big event. But anyway, I was in a part of my constituency, and I think I was trying to keep the kids awake, so the car window was open, and I was trying to distract my son with a phone. It was very bad parenting, but I was trying to keep them both awake and alert. And my son knows how to work my phone, because kids do now with tech. And I want to put on wrestling music. I don't know if you know, guys, but the wrestling theme tunes were a big thing. The entrance music of the different wrestlers.
Yeah.
So he was putting on the music, and my son was like, "I'm going to get the music for the British Bulldog, who was a wrestler back in the day." Right. And the British Bulldog sadly passed, and he died young. But his entrance music is just Rule Britannia.
Oh, right.
Right. So it's just like blaring, and my son had the radio turned up, and he was flicking through like Hulk Hogan's music and the other words music, and I'm just like, "Thanks, just stay awake. That's all I'm interested in, is keeping them awake. Play what you like, I don't care." But this is up really loud, and the car window's open, and he presses the British Bulldog's music, and it's just Rule Britannia, ba 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 ba, and it just blares out the window. And just as he does that, a fellow walks past in a GAA top, and he looks in the window and he sees me driving. And I sort of like that. No.
This is unionist outreach.
And I sort of got on it, yeah. But anyway, yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. And I think he's probably just thinking, "I knew it about your man hotel. I knew it." But anyway,
what do you suspect? Yeah. What do you do for crack, Matthew? That was quite an interesting debate. But are you a serious man normally? Do you like a bit of comedy? Do you go to gigs? Do you do anything?
Well, I actually used to do a bit of comedy myself back in London. Yeah. I used to do a bit of improv more than stand-up. Improv.
Really?
So I'm not hooking for a job here. I'm not trying to put myself forward for it. But I did occasionally used to do improv back in London, for a while anyway. When I was a civil servant, it was a light relief from my day job.
Well, we're on stage down, Patrick.
I will be there. If I'm not there,
I'll go.
Exactly, and I'll meet you in the bar at Turley's beforehand. But the problem is with improv. So I wasn't I was okay. I got the odd laugh, but obviously you guys will probably know, because it's your trade. The main thing about improv is the core rule is you can't block. You have to say yes and. As you say. So whatever the idea or the concept, you have to say yes and whatever. Like I have just back from the moon, and I've got this written. You say yes and then you continue the idea. It's terrible training for Northern Ireland politics and Stormont, because you're supposed to say no. Everything is, someone comes up with an idea, and you're never supposed to say yes. You have to say no.
That's a terrible idea. What is it again?
In many ways, the worst possible training for being in local politics is improv comedy. But To answer, yeah, I do. Like, I have 3 young kids, so a lot of it is once you get the deal with politics and the day job and getting the kids to bed, like everybody else. I mean, I enjoy kind of trying to get exercise occasionally, football.
I mean, we do slag off MLAs and stuff like that, but do you get much free time? I mean, I know that you don't spend. People go, oh, they're only in the assembly for half an hour. I know the assembly debates and your constituency work and all of that, and then you're the leader of the opposition, so you're looking at papers and presumably writing stuff and all. Yeah. Is it like it's not a 9-to-5 job? Is it? I mean, it's definitely how many hours are you MLAing?
I don't count it. Sadly, and though I'm
does your partner go, for fuck's sake, or is she?
Yes, a bit at times, but she's very good about it. So it is a bit over. It can be a bit of a kind of all-encompassing job. To an extent, it has to be, because you have to be, and people here are very engaged. They want to see their politicians, and they want to. And I have to say, most people are actually really dead on and friendly. There are very few people who are unpleasant or rude. I mean, I could count on the fingers of one hand the number of occasions anybody has ever actually been.
Well, we just found out before we came on air that I'm your constituent, so you may revise that when I get your ring about your drains.
For the next year, you can bombard me now. I actually, you were telling me, I've actually done a bit of constituency casework. I'll update you on in that part of the world where you are. So I don't get as much maybe free time as I would with other things. I've got a soon-to-be 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, and an 8-year-old. So a lot of my free time is managing those guys. But they're great, and they're.
But if you had 48 hours, just you and your missus, and if no kids, and the kids are being minded, what would you do?
I would probably I'd go and have one really good pint of stout somewhere, and then sleep, and then read. And then if I woke up, and then I'd just like read or watch a film or something. But yeah, I was like have a perfect pint of stout somewhere, and then sleep for 20 hours, and then wake up and take some exercise or read a book for a while and just enjoy my freedom. So I would hope whenever the kids are a wee bit older, there would be a wee bit more free time. And when I say the kids, I mean the people in Stormont rather than my offspring.
Listen, you told us you'd be back at Stormont for 12:30.
Yes, I do.
So we're thank you very much. That was nearly an hour. Sorry, that flew.
No problem. Thank you, guys.
Partly because you're a politician and give politicians answers, but no, I enjoyed that. Genuine. I take that as a compliment.
Okay,
by the way.
Good.
Because one of the things I think people like you because you do chat freely and openly, and you seem like a human being as well. The very best of luck to your children. I hope you persuade them not to be Man United fans.
I know.
But thank you very much to Matthew O'Toole for joining us, and thank you very much to our sponsor, Pocket Geek on the Lisbon Road. Go and get your computer fix from Pocket Geek. They are constituents of Matthew O'Toole. Good luck opposing with
constructively.
And yes, I need to look at my life insurance policy and see whether or not I'm going to live to see a United Ireland.
Oh, I think you will. I think you will.
I
think you will, definitely. Yeah, and I think you'll be gigging in Downpatrick, raising a glass and turleys to the
turleys. He's promised it.
He's promised it. Matthew Toole, thank you very much. Thank you for listening to the Give My Head podcast. We'll see you next time. Thank you.